And thank you, Andrea, for this very smooth introduction. I think my presentation now fits very well. So I mentioned it before, I will present you the contents of the call that currently is open. This is the call that is open under the automated translation part of the CEF program. This is the first time we have launched a call under this program for automated translation. So what I have been saying before, we have been developing things in-house, we have been procuring things. This is now a call for proposals that enables us to engage more with the stakeholders, with the community outside, with you, and to help you then help us also develop the platform. And as I said before, CEF e-translation is a building block to make all CEF DSIs multilingual. And currently, it provides multilingual support to the European public online services through the machine translation service. So the machine translation service is what we have. The call opened in September on the 20th, and I believe, and it will close on the 15th December 2016. There is a budget of 6.5 million euro available for collaborative projects, which will be funded at a rate of 75% of eligible costs. So 75% of the costs of the project will be covered by the European Commission. The 25% has to be covered by participants. And there will be a pre-financing of 50% of the grant amount, which we will pay upfront when the contract, when the grant agreement is signed. We say in the call text that the indicative duration of the actions is expected to be 1 to 2 years, because we expect these projects to be either deployment projects or short focused actions. So that's why we have indicated the indicative duration to be like this. There are 2 action lines under this call. So the submissions, the project proposals can address one or the other. And I think in this context, the first one will be probably more interesting to you, but I will present nevertheless both, because maybe you see you take interest in the other one as well. So the first action line is we call them resources projects, because the overall aim of those projects is to stimulate language resource provision to the CEF e-translation, CEF automatic translation platform. And I will explain later what we mean by stimulate language resource provision, because this is the wording of the call text and it can be interpreted in many ways. And the second action line, we call them integration projects. So this is about integrating the services offered by the e-translation, and currently this is the machine translation service, into multilingual cross-border digital services. So the resources projects are expected to stimulate language resource provision to CEF AT, and this can be done by working in and with the member states to identify, collect, and process language resources for pan-European public online services. So this is, I think, a possibility for you to get engaged. However, let me just... This can also be done not only by identifying, collecting, and processing the language resources, but addressing other important bottlenecks that have been identified as bottlenecks in the language resource provision. So, for instance, addressing those languages where we have the most prominent scarcity of data, or where we need them most, or the fact that the data is not easily accessible and readily available. So not all of that is provided in the format readily that can be readily used by machine translations. Not all of them are provided as TMX files, so some technical work might be needed. What language resources are we looking for? So it was said before, bilingual data, multilingual corpora, large monolingual corpora also, domain-specific parallel corpora and terminologies in the fields that are of, in the first place, of particular relevance to the CEF DSIs. So consumer rights, culture, legal domain, social security, health, public procurement, etc. And this, of course, builds on the earlier work done in the framework of ELRC and the gaps in language coverage that have been identified in the earlier actions, and as well on the DSI needs. So what do they need? As for the integration projects, these projects are expected to work on a specified public digital service, and they are supposed to integrate the automated translation building block, use it and extend it for the purpose of making the public online service multilingual. So the services targeted here are not limited to the CEF DSIs. They can be CEF DSIs, but they can also be other public services that are important to those DSIs or that connect to them. Even integration to commercial services is possible if this promotes the digital single market and is relevant to the CEF DSIs. This is not excluded as per the wording of the call. What is important that the services have a multilingual and a cross-border element. So, there must be a need from that service, a defined need, why they want to go multilingual and what is it that they need. In scope of those projects could also be some adaptation work that needs to be done on the architecture of those services so that they can effectively become multilingual, because the projects are expected to foster the multilingual best practice and architectures in public services. And although the e-translation currently only offers a machine translation service, the scope of this call, so the projects, they can be wider in scope. So there can be other services that are mature and will be deployed for making a particular public online service multilingual. A requirement that is stipulated in the call when you read it, that the consortia should include the early adopters and operators of the DSIs or of the public online services. So what we want to avoid is, we want these to be deployment projects in the particular public online services. That's so it's clear that the operators of these services should then be part of the consortium and demonstrate that they will be using that and maintaining that, sustaining that. So the objectives of the call are practical. They are not academic. How to improve? We want the actions to improve quality and coverage of automated translation, especially in the public sector use cases relevant for CEF. And we want to, and we expect that the proposals resulting from this call will boost the take-up of CEF e-translation services among the CEF DSIs and other public services relevant to these DSIs or to the general digital single market in general. So we want to really put the system that we are developing into a real-life test and gather some then insights also how that works. So research activities are not in scope of the call. Also, development of tools or language resources is not in scope of the call. The choice of languages to be addressed should be based on the needs of the digital service. And also the call says that you are encouraged to use the e-delivery building block, which is another building block was mentioned in my earlier presentation. If you are, if it comes from your needs that you need secure document delivery. This service can be either deployed or used through a service provider for e-delivery. The next two slides are I will just go quickly through them. These are points which you should consider if you would be considering submitting a proposal. The proposals are evaluated according to 3 criteria: relevance, quality and efficiency, and impact and sustainability. So I have tried to put here bullet points that you should consider in the context of the language resources projects. So what will make your project proposal relevant? If the language resources that you are addressing are relevant to the e-translation, obviously. It should, for quality and efficiency, it should be clear or made clear the ownership and the licensing status of the language resources must be clear. It must also be clear how privacy and or legal issues have been or will be resolved. And also it must be shown, that the data holders support and will contribute to the project. And how effective are your national networks and the outreach? How will you gather the data? Under impact and sustainability, as I mentioned, the overall aim that we have under the CEF-AT is to create a pipeline of language resources flowing to the CEF e-translation platform. So how does your project contribute to that? For the integration project, under the relevance, how is the online service that you are addressing relevant for the CEF DSIs or for the digital single market? Under quality and efficiency, is the service ready? Is there clarity on what the service needs in terms of multilingual support? Are the solutions that are needed, are they available for the given languages? What are the architectural adaptations needed to support multilinguality in the service? And how will the integration with the machine translation service of the e-translation of the CEF automated translation, how it will be established, how it will work? And are the technology providers appropriately involved, if there are technology providers beyond the e-translation, currently available machine translation service? Under impact and sustainability, this is also something I mentioned before. We would like to see that the service we offer is taken up by public digital services who are committed to using it, maintaining it, sustaining it. So not something that will stop after the project ends or a year after. This slide is on some eligibility criteria, which are defined in Section 8 of the call text and Annex 2 to the work program, because of course we have plenty of documentation that you would have to go through if you want to submit a proposal. So I will say where to find this documentation, but the important eligibility criteria here are that each applicant in the consortium, which must consist of at least 3 organizations based in 3 different member states or countries participating in the CEF Telecom program, each of them needs to obtain the agreement of its member state to participate in such a proposal, and that such proposal is submitted to the call. It is done by means of obtaining a signature and a stamp on a specific form, and there is a list of contact points for each country where this can be obtained. And finally, there is a call website with some documents. There is a frequently asked questions document and some introductory document to what e-translation is, and the European Language Resource Coordination. But I will be happy to answer any questions if you have. No. Okay, thank you.